At my sister's engagement, my mom suddenly grabbed the mic, pointed at me, and said, "And this one's still living in my basement, even though she has a master's degree." Everyone laughed, except my therapist, who was there with her husband. She texted me from across the room, "They've weaponized your potential." I spent the rest of the night holding a tray of champagne, pretending I was just another server. I never told them I was offered a job in another country the next day. I'm a 34-year-old woman. Let's just call me Ray. I've lived in Kingston, New York, most of my life. Small town, familiar faces. I went away for college, got my master's in education policy in Boston, and came back home in 2020 when the world shut down and my plans dried up like rain puddles in July. I'd been working in a mid-tier nonprofit that folded under the weight of funding cuts. Moving back into my mom's house felt like a temporary thing, a stopover. But stopovers don't usually last 4 years, do they? And so, for nearly half a decade, I lived in her basement. Literally. Finished, with decent light, but still a basement. At first, it was fine. Then it became convenient. Then it became embarrassing. Then it just became my life. I paid a little rent, did more than my fair share of chores, and tried not to take up too much space. That last part is important, because I spent most of my life trying not to take up too much space. Then came my sister's engagement. Melina is 5 years younger than me. She's always been my mom's favorite. I used to tell myself that was just how it felt from my perspective, but eventually, even the most optimistic parts of me couldn't ignore how differently we were treated. Melina is vibrant, loud, always has something to say, and she looks like our mom when she was younger. She went into real estate and is very good at branding herself. Big smiles. Filters. She doesn't read books, but she does post about them. She got engaged to Rafi, an orthopedic surgeon from Albany whose parents own a vacation house in Saratoga Springs. I didn't know them well, and I didn't really know him either. But he seemed fine. Quiet. Polished. Kind. The engagement party was held at his parents' estate in early June. It was the kind of place that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. White columns, green hedges trimmed like topiary chess pieces, and rows of outdoor lights that looked like they'd been arranged by a wedding planner who charged by the watt. I wasn't excited about going. I told Melina I wasn't sure if I'd make it. "You have to come," she said over the phone. "It's family. You can't not be there. People will notice." That was her concern. Not my feelings. Not whether I'd be comfortable. Just optics. So I said okay. Because saying no to family in my house meant making things harder than they already were. I packed a dress I hadn't worn in 3 years and told myself I could leave early if it got weird. It got weird fast. For starters, no one really acknowledged me. My mom gave me a once-over and said, "Well, at least it's not black," when she saw my navy blue wrap dress. Melina gave me a distracted hug while fixing her curls in the mirror behind me. I hovered near the bar for a while, sipping club soda because I didn't trust myself to drink. I tried to start a few conversations with extended family, but they all seemed eager to get back to the more central guests. And then I saw someone I recognized. It was my therapist. Yasmin. She was standing near the garden with a glass of white wine and a tall man who I assumed was her husband. Turns out they lived 2 doors down from Rafi's parents and had been invited as neighborhood friends. She made eye contact with me and smiled, warm but distant. I appreciated that. Professional boundaries, you know? It was oddly comforting, like spotting a lifeguard from afar when you're drowning just a little in the shallow end. The evening bled on. Speeches started. Rafi's father thanked everyone for coming. Melina's best friend cried through her toast. There were polite chuckles. Raised glasses. And then someone handed the mic to my mom. I should have left then. She walked to the center of the patio and raised the mic like she was headlining a cabaret. She looked stunning, I won't lie. Age had treated her like a loyal dog, always flattering and rarely biting. She smiled at the crowd and started her little routine. "Thank you all so much for being here. This is such a special night, for Melina, of course, and for all of us who've watched her grow into the radiant woman she is today." Applause. And of course, thank you to the Kaplans for opening their beautiful home, more applause. And then, she said, her tone shifting just slightly, "There's my other daughter." My stomach flipped. "Ray is here tonight, too." She's currently living in my basement, even though she has a master's degree. Laughter. Laughter from relatives, from strangers. The kind that doesn't even check to see if the joke landed. They just laughed because they were told they should. I froze. My vision narrowed like the walls were pressing in. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't sad. I was just stunned. She continued her speech, oblivious to the small death she had just orchestrated. My sister giggled behind a glass of champagne. And then I felt it, my phone vibrating in my hand. It was Yasmin. Just one message. They've weaponized your potential. I don't remember deciding to do what I did next. It wasn't a conscious thought. I just moved. I walked through the patio doors into the kitchen where the catering team was staging drinks and trays. I picked up a silver platter full of champagne flutes, lifted it like I had done it 100 times, and walked back into the crowd. No one questioned me. No one blinked. One woman even said, "Thank you, sweetheart," as I offered her a glass. I didn't cry. Not once. I just stayed in motion, floating through the party like a ghost wearing heels. I stood in a far corner by the potted lemon trees, watching people dance and toast and take selfies. Yasmin caught my eye once across the lawn. She gave me the smallest nod. And then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't her. It was an email. From a hiring director at a major NGO I had interviewed with nearly a year earlier. They were based in Geneva. I had applied as a long shot. A dream job I assumed had gone to someone shinier, younger, more fluent in French. Subject, offer letter, education program coordinator. I opened it. Full-time. 2-year contract. Housing stipend. Visa sponsorship. Start date, July 3rd. I stared at the screen while my mom laughed in the background about something Melina had said. I closed my eyes, felt the weight of the tray in my hands, and smiled for the first time all night. I didn't tell anyone. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even the week after. They didn't deserve to know. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. And honestly, it felt better that way. I didn't say anything the next morning. Sunday brunch at my mom's house was a tradition, and like most traditions in our family, it had long stopped being about connection and started being about performance. Melina was already there, still glowing and scrolling through photos from the night before. My mom was making coffee in her robe, humming some off-key show tune she'd butchered since I was a kid. "Didn't you have fun?" she asked when I walked in. No apology. Not even a hint that something might have been off about what she did. Just a wide smile like she'd nailed a monologue. I sat down, unsure what to say. I hadn't slept much. I kept replaying her words in my head, the way people had laughed, the look on Yasmin's face. The job offer is sitting unread in my inbox. I'd only skimmed it once. It felt too good, too impossible, like a page torn out of someone else's story. Like if I looked at it too long, it might vanish. "Don't look so serious," my mom added, flipping bacon. You know, I was only joking. I wanted to ask her who the joke was for. Instead, I stared at the bacon curling in the pan and said nothing. Melina posted a reel from the party later that day. It opened with my mom's speech, yes, including the part where she joked about me living in the basement. You could hear the laughter. She cut away before showing my reaction. Not that there was one. I had already disappeared into the kitchen by then. I stared at the video for a long time. It had already gotten a few hundred likes. Aunt Celia commented, "Classic Ingrid face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy." I opened my email again. The offer letter was still there, waiting. That night, I replied. Subject, acceptance and confirmation. I signed the documents, scanned my passport, and hit send before I could second-guess myself. I shut the laptop, sat in the dark for a while, and finally let myself cry. Not out of sadness, not really. It was something else. Grief, maybe. Or release. Or maybe just the echo of 4 years of stillness finally cracking open. Over the next few days, I began making arrangements. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I needed this to be mine, just for a little while longer. I gave 2 weeks' notice at the community literacy center I worked at part-time. They were kind about it, even excited. The director, Martina, said, "I always knew you were meant for bigger things." I nearly broke down in the hallway. Packing was harder. Not physically, I didn't own much. But emotionally, each drawer was like an excavation site. Old notebooks filled with lesson plans, boxes of books I had pretended I'd reread, dresses I hadn't worn since grad school. My diploma was still in the same mailer it came in. Unframed. I had told myself I'd wait until I had an office, or at least an apartment with walls I didn't have to share. I booked my flight. June 27th, JFK to Geneva, one way. I waited until June 24th to tell them. Dinner was chicken piccata. My mom was in a good mood because the florist for the wedding had just confirmed availability for the September date. Melina was on her phone, barely pretending to engage. I waited until after the plates were cleared. I'm moving to Switzerland. The sentence dropped like a stone in water. Ripples. Then silence. What? My mother said, her fork halfway to her mouth. I got a job offer. In Geneva. It's full-time. They're sponsoring me. Melina blinked. When? Tuesday. The silence that followed was almost poetic. Like they were trying to understand what I meant and couldn't quite fit it into their version of me. You're serious? Mom asked. Since when? I got the offer last week. At the party. At the party, she repeated, as if I had violated some sacred rule by having something good happen in the middle of her daughter's big day. And you didn't say anything? Melina added, her tone rising. No, I said. I didn't. My mom laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief. Or maybe a threat. So what, you're just going to pick up and go? Leave everything behind? Everything? I echoed. What exactly am I leaving behind? Melina's face twisted, a mix of hurt and defensiveness. Us. I looked at her. Really looked. She was beautiful. Always had been. But in that moment, I realized how much of her identity had been built in the shadow of mine, mocking it, ignoring it, or using it to shine brighter. She wasn't cruel. But she wasn't innocent either. I'm not leaving you, I said. I'm choosing me. They didn't speak to me much after that. Mom slammed a few cabinet doors and made a big show of saying she'd never asked me to stay. That she'd bent over backward to support me while I found my footing. Melina posted a vague story that night about betrayal and fake people with a crying emoji. I didn't respond. I didn't correct anyone. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. The basement was empty by Sunday. I left a note on the kitchen table. Not dramatic. Not bitter. Just 3 lines, thank you for housing me when I needed it. I hope one day you see me for who I am. Love, Ray. Then I left. I took the train from Rhinecliff to Penn Station, then the subway to JFK. I didn't cry at the airport. I didn't feel much of anything. Just tired. Quiet. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally exhaling. Geneva greeted me with clean air and silence. Cobblestone streets, cafes with wrought iron chairs, people speaking softly in French and German and Italian. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment the first night and listened to the stillness. I didn't check social media. I didn't call home. I didn't respond to the passive-aggressive texts Melina sent 3 days later asking if I'd gotten this little dream out of my system yet. I was done performing. I was done apologizing for becoming something they couldn't control. I didn't owe them a single breath of explanation. It took about 3 weeks in Geneva before the quiet started to feel like something other than loneliness. At first, I filled every moment. I signed up for French classes, got lost in the city's winding backstreets, bought groceries in small batches just to interact with the baker or the guy at the corner store who always said bonne soirée like he meant it. I started work at the NGO on a Monday, jet-lagged and nervous but already more present than I'd felt in years. The office was in a converted villa near the Parc La Grange, high ceilings, lots of natural light, open windows that let in the scent of trees and lake air. My colleagues came from all over, Nairobi, Berlin, Manila, Sao Paulo. Everyone seemed to have stories about where they'd lived and how they'd landed here. For once, I didn't feel behind. I felt interesting. Valid. Like maybe all those years buried in books, overlooked at family dinners, lost in the shuffle of someone else's spotlight had been leading to this. I hadn't told anyone back home where I was living. No photos. No addresses. I didn't block them, just muted. The silence was mutual. I think they were waiting for me to come to my senses, like this was a tantrum I'd eventually walk back. What they didn't realize was that the silence wasn't punishment. It was freedom. But about a month in, I got an email from Melina. Subject line, call me. Please. No punctuation in the body. Just a number. Hers. I stared at it for an hour before closing the tab. The next day, she called me on WhatsApp. I didn't answer. Then she left a voice message. I didn't open it. But I did keep looking at it, like a splinter you can't quite bring yourself to pull out. 2 days later, she tried again. This time, I picked up. Ray, she said, tentative, like she wasn't sure I'd actually answer. Hi. A long pause. I could hear background noise, wind, maybe traffic. Wherever she was, it wasn't quiet. Are you okay? She asked. It wasn't an apology. But it also wasn't an accusation. I'm good, I said. Really good. Another pause. I saw your LinkedIn update. Geneva? Yeah. Wow. More silence. I didn't offer anything else. I let her sit in it. She wasn't used to that. Normally, I'd rush to fill the gap. To make her comfortable. But I didn't owe her that anymore. I didn't know it was that serious. The job. I didn't realize you'd actually go. That's because you didn't ask. That landed. I could feel it through the line. I'm sorry, she said eventually. And this time, she sounded like she meant it. About what Mom said. And that I laughed. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. It wasn't just a joke, Mel. I know. I was standing right there. I know, she said again. Softer this time. I leaned against the window frame, looking out at the courtyard below. A woman was hanging laundry from a third-floor window. The sun was warm on my arm. My coffee had gone cold. She always made me feel like I had to be the successful one, Melina said suddenly. Like I had to be better than you, or she'd be disappointed. I didn't know how to stop. I don't think I even wanted to stop, for a long time. I didn't say anything. I think she resented that you were smarter than both of us. But you didn't use it the way she wanted. I blinked, surprised. I'm not saying that to be cruel, she added. I'm just saying, maybe it made her feel like she couldn't take credit for you. That hit something I didn't know I'd buried. I swallowed. Yeah. Maybe. She sighed on the other end. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it. I let the silence sit again. Eventually, I said, thank you. We didn't talk much longer. No grand declarations. No promises to rebuild. Just a few more words, and then she hung up. I stood there a while after the call ended. Letting the sound of the city fill the room. Breathing slowly. Deeply. That was the first time I thought, maybe we'll be okay. Not close. Not like sisters in movies. But honestly, maybe. Eventually. 3 days later, I got an email from my mom. No subject line. Just a few lines of text. I suppose you think you've proven something. I hope they see you for who you really are. Melina tells me you're doing well. Congratulations. That was it. I didn't reply. I reread it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because it was so perfectly her. No congratulations without the slap. No acknowledgement without the dig. She couldn't let herself be proud. Not without also reminding me that in her eyes, I was still wrong somehow. Still undeserving. And yet, it didn't hurt the way it would have before. It felt distant. Small. Like her power over me had shrunk the farther I got from her house, her rules, her carefully curated image of who I should be. In Geneva, I wasn't anyone's disappointment. I was just Ray. A woman rebuilding her sense of self from scratch. Learning how to trust her own voice again. Living in a place where no one knew her past, only her present. The NGO work was hard. But it was hard. Long days, real impact, no room for ego. I was assigned to a team coordinating education outreach in refugee camps along the Turkish border. I spent hours on Zoom calls with people who had lived 10 lives harder than mine. I learned how to listen again. Really listen. And slowly, I started to feel like I was useful. Not in a performative, family gathering kind of way, but in a deeply human one. There were still quiet nights when I'd sit on my balcony with a glass of wine and wonder how it all might have gone differently. If my mom had been kinder. If I'd left earlier. If Melina hadn't laughed. But I didn't regret anything. Life in Geneva became routine in the best possible way. I learned how to live in my skin again. I stopped second-guessing my instincts. I made friends, real friends, not coworkers I tolerate or people who only text when they need something. We drank espresso in cafes, hiked on weekends, and talked about everything from politics to music to the soft ache of loneliness that never fully leaves immigrants and expats alike. I even started dating again, something I hadn't done seriously in years. His name was Elias, a translator originally from Thessaloniki who worked for Médecins Sans Frontières. He was calm, funny, unbothered by my quiet. And best of all, he had no idea who I used to be. 6 months into my life in Switzerland, I got an email from my former professor at BU. She'd been following my work and wanted to nominate me to co-author a paper on refugee education policy for a major conference in Paris. I said yes. Not because I needed the recognition, but because I finally believed I had something worth contributing. By February, the paper had been accepted, and the conference organizers flew me out and paid for everything. I stood on stage in a room full of scholars and policymakers, talking about education access and trauma-informed pedagogy. Afterward, a small cluster of people stayed behind to thank me for what I'd said. One of them asked where I'd studied. Boston University, I said. But most of what I know, I learned after. That night, walking back to the hotel, I realized something. I made it. And not just made it like I had a good job or lived in Europe. I had made it out of the version of myself my family had tried to freeze in time. The one they mocked and minimized because they needed her to stay broken, uncertain, dependent. I was no longer the basement daughter. I was a woman with her own light. That realization gave me an idea. Melina's wedding was approaching. Invitations had been sent months ago. I hadn't responded. But Melina had followed me on Instagram after our short call, and I'd accepted. I didn't post often, but when I did, they were quiet glimpses of my new life: a coffee in the square, a museum pass on my lanyard, the lake under snow. She liked everyone. About 3 weeks before her wedding, she messaged me. "We'd still love to have you at the wedding. No pressure, but I'd really like you there. You could even say something during the toast if you want." Red heart. I didn't reply right away. I thought about it. Long and hard. And then I said yes. But I had a plan. The wedding was at a vineyard just north of Albany. Classic upstate aesthetic, white chairs, rustic barn, everything styled like a Pinterest board. I flew back to New York 2 days ago. Stayed at a hotel in Kingston. I didn't go home. I rented a car and drove up to the venue the day of. I wore a charcoal gray jumpsuit, not flashy, not muted, just strong. I walked into that space like I had never belonged to their version of me. People noticed. It's amazing what absence does. It makes people curious. Uncomfortable. My mom spotted me first. She was standing with 2 cousins, holding a glass of rose and smiling through her teeth. Her expression shifted when she saw me, like she wasn't sure if she should pretend to be happy or prepare for a PR crisis. "Ray," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You made it." I did. "You look, well." "Thank you." I said nothing more. Let her sit awkwardly. Melina was radiant. I'll give her that. Nervous, buzzing, but radiant. When she saw me, she nearly cried. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," I said. She hugged me tighter than I expected. The ceremony was short and lovely. Rafi seemed steadier, more grounded than I remembered. During the reception, I kept to myself. Nodded at familiar faces. I had been seated at the miscellaneous friends table. Smart move on her part. And then it came time for the toasts. First was the best man. Then Melina's best friend. Then, to everyone's surprise, Melina stepped forward and said, "My sister Ray is here tonight." I'm so happy she is. And I asked her if she felt comfortable to say a few words. All eyes turned to me. I didn't walk up right away. I stood slowly, let the hush settle over the room, and walked to the mic with calm steps. I took a deep breath and looked around. My mom's eyes were wide. Melina's face was open and hopeful. I smiled. Hi everyone. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, so I'll keep this short. Soft chuckles. I've been gone for a while. And it's given me time to think about family, distance, and identity. About the stories people tell about us, and the ones we tell ourselves when those stories don't fit. I paused. Some of you might remember me as Melina's older sister. The one who lived in the basement. The one who had a master's degree and still couldn't figure it out. That story was told often. Out loud. In front of people. People shifted uncomfortably. But the thing about stories is, they can change. If you live long enough, and leave long enough, you start writing on your own. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I wasn't going to share this, but Melina gave me the mic. I handed it to her. It's an invitation. To an event in Geneva next month. I've been asked to speak at the United Nations. Gasps. Actual gasps. About refugee education and trauma-informed policy. The same work I was doing in the basement. The work no one believed in. I looked straight at my mom. I wanted to remind you all that failure isn't permanent, and success doesn't need to look like what you're used to. Sometimes, the biggest revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's proving yourself right, and not needing their applause to do it. I turned to Melina. Congratulations, sister. I hope you both write a beautiful life together. And I walked off. No mic drop. Just calm silence and the weight of everything I had reclaimed. I didn't stay long after. Just long enough for Melina to find me in the parking lot. She didn't say anything. Just hugged me. Tighter than before. I meant what I said, she whispered. I'm proud of you. I didn't know if my mother would ever say those words. But by then, I didn't need her to. I had already given them to myself.